Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Mob Psycho 100, Season 2, Episode 5. An epic and great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, basically, once again, this world is supposed to be a world where Mob doesn't have his powers, and like how that slight deviation and change has such a drastic thing. And it's like, right, the world of Mob Psycho, except for certain points, is very colorful and bright, and this is like so dark and grim. And the new transfer student shows up, Minori, and I thought that was interesting when he immediately says like, this is actually how she acts in real life. I was like, interesting. She was a bully that basically to kind of stay where she needs to be, because it's like, right, you are the higher echelon of people and stuff like that, and because of that she kind of tries to put people in their place. It just, so she was a bully, and then she kind of did look down upon people. So because that was something I brought up last episode. It's like, oh, how do we know this isn't like a fabrication of like, oh, people aren't going to act this way? It's like, well, he was like, these people are as close to who they are in reality. I mean, to be fair, it's like we saw that mean teacher, but it's like, well, we haven't really spent a lot of time with Mob's teachers, or even just the one teacher. Once again, I always forget like how, because I think you stay in the same class. I think your teachers rotate. I think that's how that works in Japan when it comes to schools. I'm not well versed enough. It seems like that's the case, but I could be mistaken. Either way, but yeah, that one teacher like smacked Mob, and so, I mean, obviously, well, I know at least in Korea it is. I don't know if it's like that in Japan where like teachers can hit students. I don't know if that's changed and frowned upon, but I think one upon, like, like even in more recent years, I feel like that was still, you could still do that, and then you probably still can even to this day. I just wasn't sure, because I definitely read a Korean manga a couple years ago that had like a teacher hitting a student like that, but it's almost like, so that's why I'm like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility culturally and stuff like that. I think it's culturally acceptable. Whatever case may be, I'm not trying to make an indictment or anything like that. I'm just saying like that teacher hit him, and it's like, what, like, can we, because I think it's such an interesting thing that the show decided to do, and I think this kind of speaks volumes. There's only one person in Mob's life that pops up during this story, and I guess that's kind of to the point. The only person in his life that pops up is Risu, but none of the other characters he's come to know, because those are his actual friends, but those are people like who wouldn't be, those people aren't in his life if he doesn't have his psychic ability. So it plays into that. So we don't know how differently they would act. They're probably still acting the same way, but that's the point, to kind of isolate Mob even more so, where he feels so alone. He's getting bullied. He's going to be treated like crap. Like, hey, those bullies who like try to attack him in episode 3, whereas like he luckily had friends who all stepped up to back him up, whereas like Risu as well, but Risu walks by him, so him and Risu do not have a good relationship in this world. Because I mean, it's interesting too, considering like, well, we know Risu, like a part of the underlining issue with Risu that he had with Mob is like it was power related. So you'd think without those powers they would have a better relationship. Once again, you can't really take Mogami like at face value. Like, he could be saying this, like there's some grains of truth, but it's like, I don't know if Risu would really have such a negative relationship with his brother to kind of abandon him like that. But yeah, it's just like, yeah, trying to drown Mob in all of this, the sadness and the whole aspect of like, right, you're trying to like bottle away all like your negative emotions and stuff. Like, in fact, for Mob, he's only been in there like, at one point they clock it at least 30 minutes, but eventually, like, for him, like, kind of like a Tsukiyomi type of situation, like, you've actually been in here for 6 months trapped in this illusion. And on the outside, luckily, Minori's dad is okay. The other psychics that are there are able to get him and all the injured out. So, okay, so no death on that front. Because Dimple was able to kind of use a little bit of his power to break through, because Mogami is so trapped and focused on everything inside of his mind that he isn't like focused on the outside world. And so Dimple is saying like, right, Mob is good as gone, because he should have been done in a minute if this was really going to go the way we thought it would. But you have Regan believing in Mob. It's like, Mob is actually trusting you, and he's like, that's the first time anyone's ever trusted in you, isn't it, Dimple? And he kind of didn't have a retort to it. But for Regan, I know how strong that kid is, and also I have further use for him. I need to keep using him in the future, so I'm going to sit here and believe. And Dimple's coming at it from the negative. Well, I mean, I think Regan's a little more of a softie than he wants to put on that moment. It's just kind of like a, hey, I'm going to just keep using Mom, so I'm going to believe in him because I still need to utilize him in the future. But then you have Dimple kind of looking at it like a, well, I can't really access all of Mob's latent abilities, hijacking his body, so in fact, it might benefit me to have him come back so that I can kind of manipulate him from the shadows. So Dimple's like, all right, fine, I'll stay here and believe in him as well. But yeah, you kind of do feel so bad for Mom, once again, kind of being beaten down and kind of feeling so alone. And then the whole like Minori and these other people beating him up, and to the point that Mogami's kind of winning. He's like, right, give in to your negative emotions. Because he had talked about his own story about, we got general points of it last episode, and we kind of like get into the depths of it of, once again, he's like, all right, I try to use my powers for good, but then my mom got sick. Because he has a very similar situation to Mob. It's like, I've been able to see spirits ever since I was a kid, and I could exercise them ever since then too. And my mom got sick, and I needed to pay for it, so I worked for some very bad people. He's like, even to the point I wouldn't even sleep, because sleeping meant less time to make money. But his mom still ended up dying, but he got visited by her evil spirit because she became one, and she told him like, right, the reason why I died is because of you. Basically all the terrible things he was doing, the bad stuff, kind of was haunting her, because like, I guess like any people he was killing or spirit things he was doing, that negative energy was basically falling and flowing into his mom, and she was kind of being haunted by it. So I guess that's what eventually led to him taking his own life eventually. But it's like, right, as a vengeful spirit, he was just going to like get back at the world. Just, he took a lot of his own resentments out on, I guess, just like the structure of the world. And it's like trying to be a good person instead of like leaning into his negative emotions. Like, screw that, I'm going to do what I should have been doing from the beginning, and using my powers for myself, looking out for me, doing what was best for me rather than trying to help people. It's like, what did that get me? Nothing, you know? So he's trying to pump all that into Mob, and Mob kind of does submit to that at some point in time, is giving into his darker instincts. At the same time, we have Dimple on the outside busting his way into Minori's body to go help. And it's actually, like I said, I guess he's Matsuo, the guy that's from Claw that's there. He ends up giving Dimple the extra juice to bump through. And so while Mob is like choking out a guy, the snot bubble turns into Dimple, and Dimple's like, do you remember? He's like, no, I don't. And then Dimple had to remind him, it's like, right, me and Regan are waiting for you. He's like, Regan, who is that? It's like, right, all your friends. What about, are you just going to give up on, like, Tsubomi isn't going to like the guy that you become? And it just made him realize a lot of stuff. And I thought it was a beautiful realization where Mob comes to realize, like, right, like, I do have friends. And he's like, when I get out of here, I'm going to make sure to tell them how grateful I am. Because he's like, everyone he's met, because it's like, here you are letting all these people push you around. He's like, what happened to all that muscle you were building up, you know, working alongside the Body Improvement Club? But it's the thing of Mob, it kind of had taken it for granted of like, right, I'm very, very lucky and fortunate to have the people around me, you know? To have the friends that I do, and they've had a great impact on me. In fact, it's because of them I was able to change. And I think he hadn't really quite noticed the change in himself until this episode, where he's like, yes, I have changed. And then for him, it's like, that's the same thing for other people too. No one is beyond changing. Everyone, every person, everything is capable of changing. It's just a matter of whether or not you strive and try to. So Mob fights back against Mogami, and he's using more and more, finally hits that 100% mark. And I love that whole, like, that long sequence of this entire thing inside of Minori's head. Like, that sequence is so beautifully animated and just so epic, and just the scale of it. It almost feels like this is probably the most large scale we've gotten with his fights so far. Once again, it also plays into, like, you know, you get to have, like, on a psychic level, like, you get to kind of go wild. But I mean, even if this wasn't inside of like some kind of mental plane, or just in somebody's head. Obviously, like if this was the real world, it could still like go crazy like that as we've seen in the past, but you get to really go buck wild with it being inside of like a mind palace type of situation. So but also this situation with, because I love at one point Dimple's like, oh yeah, you haven't seen this other side of Mob come out, and then even Dimple's like, wait, actually, who are you? Because I love how Mob's face is animated now. He looks very kind of like, chibi's not the right word, but he has this like very like I guess plucky would be the word, just kind of like the very like optimistic hero look on his face. Because up until this point in time, anytime Mob is ever like gone 100%, it's usually been based around negative emotions, and this is him like getting 100% and drawing out his positive emotions. So it's kind of a new thing for Mob. So he's still in control, but he's just feeling all of these positive emotions. And I love that whole point of like, right, because Mogami's only coming at it from the negative point of view, being like, yeah, negative emotions. It's like, but yeah, it's a two-sided coin, especially Mob is, where it's like, it's not just negative emotions, it's positive emotions too. It's like, just like there's light and there's darkness, and you know, even in the depths of fear, that's where you can find courage. And we see Mob like pushing back and fighting. He tells Dimple to leave, and because for him it's like, I came here for a purpose. It's like all these spirits inside of Mogami that he ate are so negative, and it's like, right, the world is cruel, it can be a mean place, but it's also capable of, you know, change and being good. But also it's like, right, all these feelings of anger and how these people felt when they died, and even as spirits. But then for Mob, he hears one voice reaching out to him, Minori, and it's like, right, I came here for an express purpose to save someone, and he's not leaving until he does. And it's like every evil spirit, I will not end this until like, I won't leave here until I've like exercised every one of them. So it's so cataclysmic, just like the buildings and just the amount of spirits being fired like bullets. They're like kaijus and stuff like that. It's just like the scale of this is insane. Like I said, he almost explodes like a supernova type of situation. But when that's all kind of like, it's almost like he destroys everything in the process, but he's fading in the process. But in that moment, the thing that's buried deep inside of him, the thing that comes up when his percentage hits triple question marks, that comes out, and Mogami goes like, interesting. So this is what's there when your self is kind of blown away. And that's like, I guess that was like it clearing the stage completely, because that's the last shot before Mob ends up waking up. And Mogami ends up leaving Minori's body, and it's like, right, I'll leave to watch over you, because he's like, I'm so curious to see, like, you've made your choice. Let's see if it's something you're going to be okay with, that choice that you made. But before he could even slip away, Matsuo shows up and imprisons him, and it's like, right, and kind of bounces. So once again, the claws, or at least the scars at the very least, from the 7th division of kind of, once again, at least with him, seem to be probably on the better side of things. So I'm sure this isn't the last time we'll see him or his fellow Scar brethren, potentially. So I'm interested to see what that, because the others are in the intro, with the exception of the leader. Like, I think he might be the one that kind of just like broke down completely. So once again, he was stopped by Sho. I believe that was his name. I don't think it was like Shio. I think it was Sho. Stopped by him, and not by like being talked to by like Regan and everything, like in season 1 finale. But yeah, but luckily Minori is okay, and she recognizes Mob because she remembers everything that happened. And he's like, is that really you? She's like, yeah, it is. And it seemed like she was going to walk away and like nothing mattered, but then she starts breaking down because she realizes like, oh my god, like who she was. And she's like, I'm so sorry. But Mob is like, no, it's okay, because I learned that everyone is capable of change, you know. And so for her, it's just, this is kind of like a new start for her too. So I thought that was kind of beautiful all around. Her talking to her dad later on, but her dad has no idea who Mob is, because Mob is only there because Regan got hired, but not Mob. It's like, so there's no way of really knowing who he is. Because it was like, I think Mob was telling Minori that he's like, oh, I'm glad like we were able to meet. It was kind of this whole thing was obviously a beneficial thing for him and her. They both grew in a lot from this experience. So I thought that was dope. And she's like, oh, I wonder if I'm going to see him again. So obviously they go to completely different schools, but I like that we are adding to the roster of people that could, potentially show up again throughout the season. But I love that her father finds the oh god, what was it? The cult that's built around Mob, and it's like right, they're low on funds. There was like a pop up, and I'm like, oh, is that supposed to be like her family contributing to them? Because I was about to say it's like not unless they become followers of the cult as well. I was like, that would be so fascinating if that ends up being the case. But yeah, um, Regan is commenting on how the fact is that he decided not to get payment for the job because he's like, yeah, like, you take easy money, and he's like, you'll just kind of be trying to shortcut your way through everything. But Dimple's like, yeah, you don't want to take the money because you don't want to take responsibility. He's like, that's what it really comes down to. So, but he's telling Mob, it's like, yeah, you'll continue being my assistant. He's like, yeah, last thing you want to do is be rich and famous. Like, you know, that you don't want to kind of go down that route. It will kind of get to you in the long run. So that was kind of a beautiful resolution to everything. And once again, a positive lesson was taken away from this. Not necessarily a negative one. I mean, I think there's some realism to like what Mob is taking away from what Mogami said, but Mogami was just coming at things from just such a pessimistic standpoint. I mean, I think you could draw like slight parallels with the whole how the scars in particular were pissed at society. I think you can draw a parallel there where it's just like, right, your experiences do shape you, and it's like you could decide whether to allow them to shape you for the better or for worse. And Mogami let them shape him for the worse. Like, he just gave into his negative emotions. Like, yes, it was a sad situation in his life, and he decided to do some bad things, and that just swallowed him whole, and he couldn't kind of escape that, because the whole point was he wanted Mob to be like him, because he's like, right, I thought I found a sympathizer in this world. But it's like the moment Mob once again gave into the flip side of things, instead of giving into his negative emotions like he typically does, he like surrendered to the positive one. So very, very interesting, very epic episode. I'm very, very excited to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.